Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jordan and today I'm doing another writing video. This time I'm going to be talking about how to create killer villains and antagonists for your stories. And I believe that creating villains and antagonists is a huge part of creating great stories. I believe that if you are writing genre fiction especially, antagonists play a key role in creating really compelling stories. They create stakes, they create drama, and a lot of the times they test your protagonists and their beliefs and values, which is really important. So how do you craft the right antagonist for your stories? Well, lucky for you, you have me, an unqualified, unpublished writer who's gonna tell you how to live your life. I'm kind of kidding. I don't have any proper qualifications, so take everything I say with a grain of salt, but I do read a lot and I do write a lot and I do think about story a lot, and this is what I've noticed in good antagonists and good villains, and I just wanted to share my perspective and my thoughts on how I think that you can create better antagonists and villains for your stories. So with that out of the way, let's dive into the video. So first I'd like to define what I mean by antagonists and what I mean by villains. Antagonists for the purpose of this video are just going to be people that oppose the protagonists, and villains are going to be a little bit more evilly inclined and are going to be the big bad of the story. Now, you don't have to agree with my definitions, I'm not sure that I do, but for the purpose of the video, that is what we are working with today. Okay, so to start out today, I'd like to talk about villains, or the big bad. I think getting the villain right for your story is both incredibly important and extremely difficult, and so today I'm going to share my perspective on how I think you can do that. Great villains are tailor-made to the protagonists of your stories. It's a sort of yin and yang. The best villains that there are out there could be completely ridiculous or at least a lot less terrifying if put in a different story. And that's a good thing because your villain should oppose your hero on some fundamental idea, moral, or belief. It is this idea that should motivate your villain to take on your protagonist. The villain has to believe in what they're doing and not just be bad. You've probably heard a million times before that you shouldn't have characters that are just black or white. They should be some shade of gray. And the easiest way to do that is to give the character motivations that aren't just solely based on whether they're a good character or a bad character. Another way to make sure that your villain isn't just bad is to give them a personality. I know, shocking. And lucky for you, I've made a video on how to create compelling characters, which I will link in the description box down below, so you should definitely check that out as well. Now, that being said, I don't think that you should show too much of a villain's personality. I think that a lot of great villains have an air of mystery around them, and that's what makes them so terrifying, is that we're not entirely sure what goes on in their head. But you also can't show too little, otherwise you're going to fall into the trap of them not being believable, or of them just seeming evil for no reason. Now, I am a bit biased. I do like my villains to be scary, so if you don't, you can definitely show a little bit more of their personality. It'll humanize them a little bit, and, you know, they'll become a little less scary. It just depends on your tastes. I personally like scary villains, but yeah, you do you, live your life. But let's get back to this yin and yang idea. I know that I am appropriating that term and not using it properly, but just this idea that, you know, there is a light side, a dark side, balance, and that you need both to have a whole. That's the gist of what I'm trying to say. So here are two examples of that idea, of characters who oppose each other on a moral standpoint. A more obvious example is Nolan's The Joker and Batman from The Dark Knight. Batman believes in law, order, and justice, and values human life. Joker, on the other hand, believes in chaos and has no value for human life. A more subtle example of this from a very different genre is Daniel and Johnny from The Karate Kid, and by extension Mr. Miyagi and the Cobra Kai sensei. Because the protagonists are students, the big ideological battle is through their teachers. The Cobra Kai sensei believes that power is achieved through violence, and therefore karate is used for violence. Mr. Miyagi believes that power is achieved through self, and therefore karate is used in defense primarily. The students harbor these beliefs as well, since they were taught them, but they are there to a lesser extent. Now, I am in no way saying that Johnny and the Cobra Kai sensei are the best villains out there, but I am saying that they are an integral part of the story, and that their morals and beliefs really make Mr. Miyagi's beliefs and morals stand out as well. Now, the other thing that is essential to making a great villain is power. Your villain should be as powerful, if not ideally more powerful, than the protagonist. Otherwise, no one's going to believe that they're a threat, And their power has to be earned and shown. If they just say that they're powerful, the audience is not going to believe it. They need to prove through their actions that they are indeed powerful. Side note, this goes for your heroes as well. So let's break this down. Power can mean different things. There is physical power, which means that they pose a physical threat to the heroes. Now, that can mean that they have armies, weapons, etc. at their disposal that the heroes do not. It can also mean that the villain themselves has either physical abilities or strength that overpowers that of the heroes. If they do have vast armies though, make sure that they have other things going for them as well. It's to me the weakest form of power and strength. They can also have power that is a lot less tangible, such as political power, power to manipulate others, or my personal favorite, mental power, for lack of a better term. Villains that are smarter than the protagonist are also the scariest and strongest in my opinion. These strengths should complement the beliefs that your villain holds. Turning back to the ones that we just looked at, the Joker's power comes from his lack of caring what happens to him. It's a sort of game, and because he doesn't care who dies, including himself, he's in a lot of ways more powerful than Batman, who is constantly trying to save everyone. The Cobra Kai sensei is physically strong and imposing to complement his beliefs that power comes from violence. Another example of an amazing villain, and possibly my favorite villain of all time, is Hans Landa from Inglourious Basterds. He's absolutely terrifying because he's so smart and we never know what he's thinking. There are some amazing video essays on these characters already though, so I'm not going to dive too deep into them, but I have linked those video essays down below, so feel free to check them out. They're pretty fantastic and I think that you will learn a lot from them. Now that to me is the basis of a good villain, but just having a villain is not enough. You have to have smaller antagonists that oppose your heroes throughout the story. Antagonists are absolutely crucial in adding drama and depth and testing your heroes, as I mentioned, in ways that the ultimate villain cannot. Now, I found the chart that I'm about to show you in either a video or a blog post a while back, and unfortunately I couldn't find it again. I don't know what it's called, so if you guys know the chart that I'm about to show you or the technique that I'm about to show you, what it's called, who created it, anything, please let me know because I would love to give credit where credit is due, and unfortunately I just couldn't find where I saw this originally, but it has absolutely changed my life. So here it is, and yeah, let me know and I'll update in the description box if I do figure out what it's called or who created this technique or whatever. Basically, we start out with this square broken into 4 boxes. Put your hero in one square and your villain in the one opposite. Then put 2 antagonists in the other 2 spots. Now, I'll be using some of my own characters as an example for this, so I've already thought this out. Your hero should have some fundamental beliefs. One of them for this character is that people should fight their own battles. Put that on one side of the square like this. On the other side, put the opposite of that, which is, in this case, that it's okay to have others fight your battles for you. Then, on the open side of the square that still contains your hero, put another fundamental belief. In this case, I'm putting that my character believes in helping and empowering the poor or lower class. On the other side, I put the opposite. This is going to take some time, but you now have a strong basis for your characters. Interesting antagonists usually have some things in common with your protagonist, and that's where the square comes in. So in this case, we have a hero who believes in fighting their own battles and helping the poor. The villain believes that not all lives are equal and that it's okay to use those less privileged to fight their battles for them. The hero and the villain therefore completely oppose each other. Antagonist 1 believes that you should fight your own battles and that power comes from doing that. You can lift yourself up from poverty if you fight hard enough, but he also believes that most of the lower class are lazy and deserve to be there. Antagonist 2 believes that it's okay to manipulate others into fighting your battles for you. In fact, it's smart to do so. It puts less risk on you. Antagonist 2 comes from poverty though, and generally targets upper and middle classmen to fight his battles and uses his growing power to help those that he cares about, which are all in the lower class. By creating the square, we are able to create antagonists that are interesting and not all bad. In fact, they have a lot in common with the protagonist and just oppose them morally on some things. These can create moral dilemmas within the hero, which is awesome. Another thing to consider, which is something that I mentioned above as well, is how much of their personality do we get to see. Unlike villains, who I believe for the most part should be at least pretty scary, antagonists don't really have to be. They can fall anywhere in between. I've made this handy bar that illustrates how much info you want to give about your antagonist to the audience or reader in order to achieve different effects. If we keep most of what they're thinking hidden, then they generally become a bit scarier, and if we reveal a lot about their personalities, emotions, thoughts, etc., then they become more redeemable and humanized. Now, it's worth noting a few things here. Number one is that just because you don't show it doesn't mean that they can not have personalities or thoughts or beliefs, etc. They need to have these things that they just need to be better at guarding them. You have to know what's going on inside their heads. Number two is that you want to avoid the extremes, which are the reds in this case. If you don't reveal enough, then the antagonist is just not going to be believable or is going to seem really flat. We need to know their motivations and beliefs at least a little bit in order to understand why they're doing what they're doing, which is extremely important. On the other end, we don't want to humanize them too much or there's just not going to be any tension. We want to create at least a little bit of mystery and drama in those characters by not just laying everything out there, because they are antagonists, and so while we can make them a little bit more humanized and redeemable, which is great and can be a great tool in storytelling, we also need to make sure that they have tension and drama and stay antagonists for as long as we need them to be. Number three, and I already kind of dipped into this in the last one, is that you can have a lot of fun kind of playing with the bar, and you can have it start on one extreme and end on another, or kind of go back and forth. It's really fun to play around with, and a great show that does this really well is Avatar: The Last Airbender, and if you've seen the show, then you know who I'm talking about, and if you haven't seen the show, then stop what you're doing, including this video, and go watch it because it's fantastic. Quite possibly one of my favorite shows ever, so go do that and you can thank me later. Alright, so that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that this video was a little bit helpful, or that you learned something from it, or just maybe even thought about something a little bit differently. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and if you have any thoughts on how to create great villains, then please leave that in the comment section below. I love to hear tips and tricks on how to create better characters and to improve your writing, so if you have any thoughts on that whatsoever, please leave that down in the comment section below. But thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.